Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in 1,000,000 eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Today we'll teach the words of my perfect teacher. Next, we'll continue with the words of my perfect teacher, where we're currently teaching great compassion and the 4 immeasurables. When we cultivate bodhicitta, everyone must definitely practice the 4 immeasurables. Without practicing them, great compassion cannot arise in our mind stream. Without great compassion arising, bodhicitta cannot be generated. If we don't have bodhicitta, then all the Dharma we practice is not Mahayana Buddhism. Although the teachings themselves are Mahayana, when they enter our mind stream, they become absorbed into either the Shravaka vehicle or the worldly, human, and celestial vehicles. As a result, the outcomes achieved are merely the worldly fruits that people seek. Therefore, when we look at the entire world, we can see that there should be many practitioners. However, if we truly examine their motivation, many people may not necessarily be Mahayana practitioners, because the purpose of their practice is all for their own temporary peace, happiness, and harmony in this present life. Most of those who burn incense, worship Buddha, practice Chan meditation, or recite Buddha's name in temples, I won't say all of them, but quite a portion are seeking their own happiness. There may be some who seek rebirth in the next life, but this is also a kind of personal happiness. Those who truly place benefiting sentient beings and great compassionate bodhicitta first in their practice are not very numerous nowadays. Therefore, when we encounter the Dharma that possesses great compassion, on one hand, we must definitely cultivate it again and again in our mind stream. To truly integrate great compassionate bodhicitta into our mind stream, we should pray to the Guru and the 3 jewels and regularly rely on this kind of practice to dispel all the darkness of selfishness in our mind stream. If each of us has a lamp, then we need not fear darkness. Or if some individuals have lamps, others can follow them. If everyone lacks a lamp, it's very difficult to find the true direction in the dark night in the wilderness. As mentioned earlier, great compassionate bodhicitta is definitely needed. Otherwise, our practice of the Vajrayana will also be unsuccessful. Regarding the situation in Tibetan areas, it is indeed true. Here the author still criticizes some people's behavior. I think Han regions are no exception. Throughout the world, internationally, some practitioners nowadays have become merely an image. Those who truly examine themselves inwardly and tame their minds, who put effort into this aspect, are not many among practitioners. Most focus on external forms, holding very grand ceremonies, making their external appearance particularly solemn. Considering this to be true Dharma, as we all know, is when the altruistic mind is the genuine teaching. Long ago, for the health and longevity of Dharma King Trisong Detsen, longevity rituals were performed. At that time, the Bonpo practitioners greatly promoted blood and flesh offerings. At that time, Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava, whom people called the second Buddha, along with Vimalamitra, our Dzogchen master from India, who finally achieved the rainbow body and permanently resides at Mount Wutai, Vimalamitra, and the great Khenpo Bodhisattva, who is Shantarakshita, the author of the Ornament of the Middle Way, and other great translators saw the colorful offerings of the Bonpo religion, through which they made offerings with blood and flesh. After this, their hearts were very displeased, and they said, "One teaching should not have 2 teachers. One Dharma should not have 2 methods. The Bonpo doctrine is not in accordance with the Dharma, and is not just an ordinary transgression. If so, we shall return to our homeland." At that time they said, "If we truly kill sentient beings and make blood and flesh offerings, this is not the teaching." Buddha Shakyamuni's teaching cannot have 2 teachers, one saying killing is necessary, and another saying it's not necessary. This is not needed. If indeed many Bonpo practitioners now also claim to be Buddhist, if they are Buddhist, we don't reject them. But do they take refuge in Buddha Shakyamuni? Do they take refuge in the Dharma and cease killing all sentient beings? Do they take refuge in the Sangha of Buddha Shakyamuni's followers? If they take refuge in the 3 jewels, the boundary between outsiders and insiders is determined by taking refuge in the 3 jewels. This has been the distinction since ancient times. Therefore, when many Bonpo practitioners acted this way, these three great masters were displeased. Therefore they said that within one teaching there cannot be two teachers, and one Dharma cannot have two sets of rules. One cannot say to kill sentient beings while another says to benefit them. This is impossible. The Bonpo doctrine is unreasonable. It's impossible for us to create negative karma together. If they really want to continue using blood and flesh for offerings, then we, Padmasambhava and the Pandita Vimalamitra, are both from India, and they didn't want to stay in Tibetan areas. Originally, conditions in Tibetan areas weren't very good then, and the food wasn't good either, so they really missed India, though now conditions in India aren't good either. Some individuals from our academy who went to India felt very comfortable when they returned and said the food was very good. They probably didn't think about many other things, mainly whether the food was good or not. So, at that time Padmasambhava and the others also said, if you really act this way, we want to go back. We really miss India and are preparing to return. All the Panditas, without consulting each other, unanimously agreed. When the king requested them to teach, they didn't transmit teachings for a long time. When invited to banquets, they didn't partake, because at that time the Bonpo religion's practices were indeed quite unreasonable in Tibetan areas. Padmasambhava once said, if there is no great compassion, then the very root of the Dharma has already become rotten. It has already rotted and been destroyed. Now, we people consider ourselves followers of the ancient Panditas and great Bodhisattvas, but if we transform the profound tantric rituals into Bonpo chanting and harm sentient beings, we obviously become the scoundrels who sell Buddhism's soul and desecrate the three jewels. The result will only be leading ourselves and others into hell. We truly become Buddhism's scoundrels, so to speak. We have already polluted Buddhism. If we now consider ourselves Buddhists but truly destroy Buddhism's image, then we ourselves will definitely fall into hell. The karma we create, truly no one can avoid it. The just king also says, in this life, what we need to fear is the king's law. In the next life, the most fearsome is the retribution of karma. Those who fear neither of these are extremely foolish. The treatise on the great perfection of wisdom also says, the power of karma is immeasurable. It does not follow those who haven't created it. The power of karma is inconceivable. If you haven't created it, it cannot possibly follow you. When the time for fruition comes, it neither perishes nor is lost. When the conditions for karmic fruition ripen, it will definitely manifest. If you haven't created it, it's impossible. After you've created it, it cannot be exhausted midway. Therefore, if we don't truly understand, various contaminations will indeed arise in our mind stream, whether from burn or other practices that make killing sentient beings their occupation. We ourselves don't know that killing sentient beings is faulty. Therefore, some individual Buddhists nowadays are particularly pitiable. Therefore, we should always maintain a humble position and wear simple clothing, wholeheartedly benefiting all sentient beings. Before we can confirm that compassion has already arisen in our mind stream, if we can concentrate our energy and practice diligently with single-pointed focus, then reciting sutras, cultivating virtue, liberating sentient beings, and other superficially pretentious Buddhist activities need not be undertaken. This means that, generally speaking, for a true practitioner, they don't necessarily need to wear elaborate clothing. Wearing simple clothes is fine, though there's no need to deliberately wear tattered clothes. Some do this to appear as yogis or practitioners in front of others, deliberately not washing their clothes, not combing their hair, not washing their face, insisting on appearing like beggars. But if the mind isn't broken, broken clothes are of no use. For true practitioners, they don't need to pay special attention to such things. They can be just like ordinary people without being particular about such matters. Just like people in cities nowadays who change clothes every day, going to the market every week to buy new clothes, changing back and forth. Today, like a white butterfly, tomorrow turning into a black butterfly, flying around like this. Who knows if it's useful or not, right? In the past, in the book of Southern Qi dynasty, from the southern dynasties, there was someone named Jiang Mi. His living conditions at that time were extremely harsh, but he was particularly studious, always studying by moonlight. He wasn't studying Buddhism. This should have been during the Northern and Southern dynasties period. Sometimes when he could finally afford to buy a piece of clothing, at that time, his old clothes had many small lice in them. He was afraid they would all freeze to death, so he transferred them all to the new clothes. He truly had great compassion, wholeheartedly, truly, with great thirst and hunger, thinking, I must benefit sentient beings, and generating particularly strong compassion for beings until this arises. Concentrate your energy and continuously cultivate great compassion. If you can't accomplish other practices, it doesn't matter. Don't be particularly anxious. Some people ask, when will tantric teachings be transmitted? Can you quickly finish teaching Bodhicitta? I really can't bear it anymore. I'm so thirsty for it. I really want to seek tantric teachings. The highest Dzogchen teachings, seeing Tikle, pointing out the nature of mind. Can you please hurry? Hurry, hurry! I really can't wait. Actually, I think we should first lay the foundation. Sharpening the axe doesn't delay cutting wood. If you practice the preliminaries very well, it won't hinder your Dzogchen practice. If you don't even have a stable foundation in basic compassion and Mahayana principles, I think there will be certain difficulties. No matter how you practice, there will be certain difficulties. So our grandiose behaviors that are merely for show, or various kinds of Buddhist activities everywhere, today announcing the opening of this or that Dharma assembly. Sometimes Dharma assemblies are fine, but some are merely for show. While some assemblies truly purify negative karma from our mind stream and are meaningful. So the Dharma is not in external appearances. Each person must focus on their own inner practice. This is particularly important. So I saw in Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche's biography that when a guru wrote the preface, he said that this great master spent 1/4 of his life in retreat. When I saw this, I felt very ashamed. In 1990, we met Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche in New Delhi. Looking at this elderly man, he indeed had compassion in his mind stream, unchanged, not fabricated. He was a guru who was particularly compassionate to every sentient being. But his practice, after long-term practice, not to mention what his previous lives were like, if 1/4 of his present life was spent in retreat, let alone 1/4, do we have even 1/10 or 1/20? We can examine ourselves. We can say this much. The sutra that perfectly encapsulates the Dharma also teaches this way. In Han regions, there's also the Sutra of the Deliberation on the Dharma, translated by Bodhiruchi. This contains exactly the same teaching citation. To attain Buddhahood, learning many teachings doesn't succeed, only learn one teaching. If you want to attain true Buddhahood, no matter how much you study, you may not succeed. Only one teaching can bring success. What is learning one teaching? This is great compassion. Whoever possesses great compassion obtains all Buddha's teachings and understands them completely. If anyone possesses great compassion, all the Buddha's teachings are completely in your grasp. Understood completely, all mastered in your hands. This sutra also mentions later the example of a universal monarch. Today my mind is quite confused. Wherever a universal monarch goes, his 4 armies follow him. Similarly, when great compassion is in anyone's mind stream, all other Dharma teachings naturally follow it. This is an analogy. There's another analogy saying when sunlight illuminates the earth, all things in the world can revive, reviving with the sunlight. Similarly, when the sunlight of great compassion shines, all beings' practice becomes easy. All the qualities of the factors of enlightenment and these virtuous dharmas mature under the sunlight of such great compassion. Therefore, cultivate only great compassion. Many great masters of the past didn't first seek high and great teachings. Of course, if you have a very good foundation, seeking great teachings is also possible. Milarepa also first wanted to start with Dzogchen, but it was unsuccessful. Then he went to another guru. Next it says, long ago, the 3 brothers. The 3 brothers are very famous in Tibetan areas, said to be emanations of the 3 protectors, emanations of Manjushri Bodhisattva, Vajrapani Bodhisattva, and Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Geshe Chengawa, Puchungwa, and Geshe Potowa. These are Dromtönpa's 3 great disciples, also emanations of the 3 protectors. A senior disciple of Geshe Khampa Lungpa came to visit Geshe Dromtönpa. The Geshe asked one by one what Venerable Potowa was doing, because his own disciple may have been away for a long time. He didn't know what Potowa was doing, so he asked him, and he answered, Potowa gives teachings to hundreds of monks every day. Every day he transmits the Dharma, continuously transmitting teachings. Geshe Dromtönpa said, Wonderful, wonderful. This is also true Dharma. From his tone, giving teachings is true Dharma. Very good. Then he continued asking what Geshe Puchungwa was doing. The senior disciple answered, he's extensively collecting resources for himself and others and building representations of the three jewels. He goes collecting donations everywhere every day. Today making Buddha statues, tomorrow building stupas, the day after printing sutras. Every day he doesn't stay in his own quarters even for a single day. Today going northeast, tomorrow south, the day after to Hong Kong. Just kidding. Puchungwa certainly didn't have time to go to Han regions then. He probably went to various places in Tibetan areas, every day creating representations of the three jewels. Geshe Dromtönpa answered as before, Wonderful, wonderful, very wonderful, very good, very good. This is also true Dharma. Creating representations of the three jewels and making Buddha statues definitely has merit. It's very good. Then regarding Venerable Gonpawa, among the three brothers, Venerable Gonpawa was probably nearby at that time. Originally, there was also Chengawa, but Chengawa wasn't included here. What was Venerable Gonpawa doing? That disciple answered, he's neither building monasteries nor giving teachings. Every day he's in retreat doing actual practice. The Geshe answered as before, Wonderful! Wonderful, this is also true Dharma. Then he immediately asked, because he was Khampa Lungpa's disciple, I don't know if Gonpawa is Chengawa, but in the original text the three brothers should be Chengawa. Puchungwa is an emanation of Manjushri Bodhisattva. Potowa is an emanation of Mahastama Prapta Bodhisattva. Chengawa is an emanation of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. What was Venerable Khampa Lungpa doing? That disciple answered, he always goes beside ant colonies, covers his head with his shawl and cries every day. He's not doing anything else, nothing at all, just continuously crying. Upon hearing this, Venerable Dromtönpa immediately removed his hat, placed his palms together at his chest, and while shedding tears said, Wonderful, wonderful. He is truly practicing the genuine Dharma. Actually, regarding this point, there are many merits to be explained. But if I were to praise him, Geshe Khampa Lungpa doesn't really like receiving praise from others. He might not be happy. Why did Geshe Khampa Lungpa cover his head and cry every day? Because he thought of all sentient beings suffering in samsara, especially seeing these ants remaining as animals continuously like this. I remember a story from Buddha Shakyamuni's past life called Genealogy of the Sakya clan. The genealogy of the Sakya clan also tells of when Shariputra and Anathapindika went together to the place where the Dharma hall was being built and saw many ants. At that time, Anathapindika asked about these sentient beings. It should have been Shariputra who said, in the earliest times, for example, when Buddha Vipas and Buddha Kashyapa appeared very long ago, these ants have continuously been here. When the 7 Buddhas appeared in the world, they still continuously wandered as ants. Very painful. There's this account, so what we see as merely an ant colony, but actually the animals inside, not only in this lifetime, but have been wandering for many eons and many lifetimes. So when Geshe Khampa Lungpa saw these sentient beings, he really couldn't bear it, and spent all day taking them as objects of Bodhicitta or great compassion, continuously crying. Otherwise, we know the merit of giving teachings is so great. The Sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels also says, if the 3,000-fold universe were filled with jewels and given in charity, the merit gained would be little. If you fill the 3,000-fold universe with jewels and give them in charity, the merit is not very much. But if you speak one verse of Dharma, the merit is extremely great. In the degenerate age, if you speak one verse, the merit far exceeds the previous example, filling the entire 3,000-fold universe with gold, silver, and treasures, and offering or giving them to all sentient beings. In this case, Potowa gave teachings every day. If the merit of speaking one verse is so great, just think about what the merit of cultivating compassion is like. The merit of making statues is also explained in the Sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels. Making a Tathagata statue the size of 4 fingers, just a small one, what we call 1 or 3 inches, brings immeasurable merit. Making one the size of 4 fingers brings immeasurable merit. If you create even a tiny Buddha statue, this merit cannot be described in words or by any other means. So it's not that giving teachings has no merit, nor that making Buddha statues has no merit, nor that staying alone in retreat every day has no merit. Regarding daily retreat, the Flower Ornament Sutra also says that even the merit of retreating for just 1 instant is incredibly inconceivable. This is explained very clearly. However, cultivating compassion is indeed the essence of all essences among all Buddha's teachings. Therefore, among all these Geshe's activities, the merit of cultivating compassion is the greatest. Therefore, all of us present here, regardless of what status we have, should frequently contemplate how much sentient beings suffer. How wonderful it would be if these sentient beings could be freed from such suffering. If you truly don't have the ability, then frequently care about them. Just like when a person is particularly concerned about something, they can't sleep, and during the day as well, they forget all their own affairs. This can happen. If some compassion truly arises in your mind stream, you cannot enjoy happiness alone every day, nor can you spend every day busying yourself for your own benefit. This is absolutely impossible, because many of a person's actions are determined by the mind. If you have genuine compassion in your heart, then your actions will definitely be for sentient beings. Even the smallest, most trivial matters, you might willingly do them. So the reason Venerable Dromtönpa praised Geshe Khampa Lungpa was also like this. When Geshe Chengawa explained many reasons for the importance of loving kindness and great compassion, Geshe Langri Thangpa respectfully prostrated and said, "From now on, I will practice only great compassion." The spiritual friend Chengawa, while removing his hat, repeatedly said, "Excellent, excellent, this is truly excellent." The conditions for cultivating compassion are extremely, extremely supreme and particularly rare. Always cultivate loving kindness and compassion, and from this Bodhi is born. This is taught in the Sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels. If we always cultivate loving kindness and compassion, if you can't practice other things, just practice compassion. Whether elderly or young, I think there's nothing that can't be practiced in this regard. Especially in A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher, there are many specific practices. So, if everyone always cultivates loving kindness and compassion, Bodhi can arise from this very easily. If you want to purify the obscurations and negative karma in your mind stream, nothing is more supreme than compassion. Many of us who practice compassion think our karma is particularly heavy. To purify negative karma, cultivating compassion is actually the best method. It is also the best form of confession practice. Next, we'll explain the account of Asanga Bodhisattva from India. This account is very important. Long ago, the true Dharma of Abhidharma in India was destroyed 3 times by non-Buddhists. The Mahayana Abhidharma true Dharma was destroyed 3 times by Indian non-Buddhists at that time. This should be recorded in the history of Buddhism in India. Buddhism in India was destroyed in the later period and also in the earlier period. This refers to the earlier period's 3 destructions. The first in the earlier period was the last ruler of the Mauryan dynasty, Pushyamitra. He was originally very capable and wanted to become like King Ashoka, but later, when these conditions didn't ripen, he destroyed all the stupas that King Ashoka had built. Later, there was a king from the Tuhara clan who also destroyed Buddhism. Later, during the Gupta dynasty, there was also a king who destroyed Buddhism. At that time, basically, many monks in India were killed and many monasteries were forcibly destroyed. Basically, the Dharma became only a name, especially Mahayana Buddhism. At this time, there was a bhikkhuni named Prakasasila from the Brahmin caste. She thought to herself, "I was born as a woman with an inferior body and cannot spread the Dharma through my own power. I should marry a man, bear children, and then spread the sacred Dharma of Abhidharma." Having considered this, she married a man of royal caste and gave birth to Asanga Bodhisattva. She also married a Brahmin man and gave birth to Master Vasubandhu. Bhikkhuni Prakasasila must also have been a bodhisattva, otherwise what she intended in her mind wouldn't necessarily be completely achievable. 8 or 9 years ago, I think I mentioned this. I always encounter such cases. There was a lay practitioner who told me, I aspire to spread the Dharma, so I want to give birth to 3 sons, 1 to spread Tibetan Buddhism, 1 for Northern Buddhism, and 1 for Southern Buddhism. I also want to give birth to 1 girl to take care of me. At that time I said, yeah, this is also possible. If it could truly be done, there have been such stories before. It's still possible, but current policies may not necessarily allow it. She said she had already figured out a method. She would have 1 child then divorce, have another child then divorce. But later she apparently married someone and went to America. A while ago she called me. When I asked about her situation, she said, I'm particularly puzzled and distressed. I can't accomplish anything now. I don't know her situation. Perhaps it's quite free there. So ordinary people may have intentions in their minds, but not necessarily accomplish them. But actually, at that time, after this bhikkhuni returned to lay life, she gave birth to 2 children. There was another one who, according to the great Tang dynasty record of the western regions, was called Bodhicitta. She gave birth to Asanga Bodhisattva, Master Vasubandhu, and another called Bodhicitta. 3 altogether. When the 2 sons grew up, they asked their mother about their father's occupation. The Indian people are somewhat different from other ethnicities. Even now, they are particularly attached to caste. Moreover, the government and many international organizations have held many meetings about this, but their contempt for lower castes has still not been resolved to this day. After going to India, I clearly discovered their extreme discrimination against lower castes. Even regarding clothing or on the street, if some people from lower castes touch the bowls of higher caste people, they won't eat and will throw the bowl away entirely. Jendun Chöpel's travelogue in India explains a lot about this. Now, it's not quite so severe, but originally we also inquired about some things during this process, and indeed discovered that racial discrimination is extremely strong. Then their mother told them, you 2 were not born to inherit your father's occupation, but were born to spread the Buddha's teachings. I hope you will study the true Dharma well and spread the Abhidharma true Dharma in the future. Actually, Asanga Bodhisattva spread the Mahayana Abhidharma, and Master Vasubandhu indeed also spread the Hinayana Abhidharma. After hearing their mother's words, Master Vasubandhu went to Kashmir to study Abhidharma with Venerable Sanghabhadra. He studied the Abhidharma Mahavibhasa Shastra, composed by the 500 Arhats at that time. Some say it was Master Sanghabhadra, others say Venerable Sanghabhadra. All the wisdom in Master Sanghabhadra's mind stream was completely obtained by Master Vasubandhu during his process of relying on his teacher. Later in Kashmir, countless people received benefit, but Master Sanghabhadra was purely a Hinayana teacher. Because of his influence, Master Vasubandhu at the beginning also slandered Mahayana Buddhism, but later, through the guidance of Asanga Bodhisattva and other spiritual friends, his contribution to the Mahayana teachings was also quite significant. Later, when he was a master at Nalanda Monastery in India, some biographies say Master Vasubandhu gave 25 classes a day. Some of our Dharma teachers give 2 classes a day and say, "Oh my, I'm so tired. Can I rest for a while?" Saturday and Sunday. How wonderful it would be to rest 3 or 4 days out of a week. 1 class a day, 2 classes a day. I think in His Holiness's biography it says 8 classes a day, wherever Master Vasubandhu went. Some biographies say 100,000 monks continuously followed him. Some say 10,000, some say 1,000. Reportedly 100,000 is the more accurate number. So every day he was giving Dharma teachings. After Buddha's parinirvana, people called him the second Buddha. The treasury of Abhidharma that he composed is still one of the 5 great treatises to this day. His contribution to Buddhism was enormous, so giving birth to such a son would be worthwhile. Next, we'll begin explaining about Asanga Bodhisattva. At the beginning, Asanga Bodhisattva received some essential teachings on emptiness from Arhat Pindola Bharadvaja. But many doubts and confusions in his mind couldn't be resolved. Finally, he thought he should go to Kukutapada mountain to pray to Maitreya Bodhisattva. Only when Maitreya Bodhisattva appeared before him could he resolve many Mahayana doctrines. Therefore, he later went to Kukutapada mountain and practiced continuously. He thought that if he could meet Maitreya Bodhisattva face to face, he could request pith instructions. So he began exclusively practicing Maitreya as his deity. Then for 6 years, he practiced with tremendous hardship. As a result, not even an auspicious dream sign appeared during those 6 years. So many of us, during our practice for 2 or 3 days, or retreat for 2 or 3 months and feel nothing, becoming particularly discouraged, as if everything is meaningless. Regarding Asanga Bodhisattva, indeed, Buddha had already said in the root manual of the rites of Manjushri that 900 years after Buddha's parinirvana, a monk named Asanga would appear. He would use his wisdom to destroy false teachers and establish Mahayana Buddhism. Later, he would live to 150 years of age, first going to the celestial realms and finally becoming a great bodhisattva. There was such a prophecy. Such a person, personally prophesied by Buddha during his practice, practiced austerely for 6 years without even one auspicious dream sign. So sometimes when we don't have dreams during practice, I once met a practitioner who said, I have great faith in Venerable Longchenpa. I've prayed to him every day for many years, but haven't had even one auspicious dream. Where on earth has Venerable Longchenpa gone? It's not that Venerable Longchenpa has gone somewhere. Your own mind stream is covered by many afflictions. As long as we pray, as we said before when explaining the treasury of blessings, a practice of Buddha Shakyamuni, whatever deity you pray to is like a sighted person before a blind person. They definitely come before you, but if my own karma is heavy, I cannot possibly see any deity or Buddha. This is excellent advice for practitioners. Otherwise, some people nowadays probably have too strong a habit from Qigong. With Qigong, if you practice for 2 days, your body feels somewhat relaxed. Some Taoist practices involving the Dantian and such, sometimes with the help of conceptual thoughts, some sensations really do arise. Sometimes we practice some external yoga or Qigong out of curiosity, and after practicing a little, we immediately have sensations. But sensations aren't very important. What's particularly important is truly generating these realizations in your mind stream. At that time, he thought, it seems I can't accomplish anything now. So he began descending the mountain disheartened. On the way, he saw someone beside the path rubbing a particularly large iron rod with soft cotton cloth. He asked, "What use is this?" That person told him, "I don't have a needle, so I want to grind this iron rod into a needle." With enough effort, an iron rod can be ground into a needle. Could this be a saying that came from Yunnan? In your Han regions, did many people used to do this? Yunnan now also has quite a lot of Tibetans and Han Chinese. At that time, Asanga Bodhisattva thought, using this piece of cloth to rub such a large iron rod, it's impossible for it to ever become a needle. Even if it were possible by that time, it would be hard to say whether this person would still be in the human realm. It seems worldly people work so hard even for meaningless things. Then, for practicing the wonderful Dharma, I must have strong, unyielding, persistent perseverance. Without perseverance, how can a practitioner succeed? Thinking this, he returned to his original place and went into retreat for another 3 years. So, his first 6 years, in our terms, not a single auspicious sign appeared, so he came down unsuccessfully. After coming down, when he saw worldly people doing these things, he felt his practice still lacked sufficient perseverance. So he returned to his cave to continue practicing, but still not the slightest sign appeared. Earlier it was 6 years plus 3 more years of retreat. Now it was 9 years. 9 years without even one auspicious dream. So sometimes when we retreat for half a month, 1 day or 7 days and don't have auspicious dreams, I think to myself, my practice probably isn't good, maybe I don't practice well, and keep thinking this way. Asanga Bodhisattva didn't have auspicious dreams for 12 years, so what does my 7 or 8 days matter? It's just purifying some of my karma, that's all. Have I mentioned this before? Near us there's an old practitioner who has been in retreat for about 20-some years. One day I said I was going to look for a retreat place. He said, "You have so many activities, you can't possibly retreat." I said, "In this place, for auspicious connections, I'll still claim a spot." in a place where cypress trees gather, particularly quiet, I said, I want to build a house here for retreat in the future. He asked, how long will you retreat? I said, if retreat goes well, of course, 1 month, or maybe 10 days, 8 days, 7 days. He said, 7 days doesn't count as retreat at all. Later I thought to myself, indeed it's true, he himself has been in retreat for over 20 years. If I retreat here for 7 days, then indeed what he said is right, it doesn't count. 7 days doesn't count as retreat at all. That's what he said then. He thought, now I truly cannot achieve realization, and so began to get up and descend the mountain again. On the journey, he saw beside a high stone mountain that towered into the clouds a person using a feather dipped in water to wipe that large stone, continuously rubbing it. Curiously, he went to ask again, what are you doing? But that person answered him, this stone mountain is too high. My house is on the west side of this stone mountain, and sunlight can't reach my house. So I'm preparing to grind this entire mountain to dust. He was using a feather to wipe it all away until the entire mountain would be gone, like the old man who moved mountains. When he answered this way, the Bodhisattva again thought as before, these worldly people are doing such meaningless things. He cannot possibly polish this entire mountain smooth with a feather. Even if such a time existed, he couldn't realize it in this lifetime. Look at the Lishan giant Buddha. There was a master who really couldn't complete it in his old age. Finally, when he passed away, he handed his project over to the next disciple. When we went to Leshan before, I saw an introduction in that cave. It was Haitong, right? So you see, if someone does this to a mountain, they definitely can't complete it in one lifetime. Therefore, he thought, if worldly people put such great effort into meaningless things, my diligence in practice is still insufficient. Then he returned again and practiced for another 3 years. Actually, during the practice process, when these things appear, on one hand they are emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Venerable Milarepa was also very sad when leaving his guru. Someone asked him to recite the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in 8,000 lines. When he heard about Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita's austerities, he returned to rely on his guru again. So some disciples first really can't stand staying with a certain guru and go back home, but finally encounter another kind of condition on the road, buy train tickets again, and return. These are targeted accounts. As a result, still not even an auspicious dream appeared. He was truly completely disheartened and felt very disappointed. He couldn't help but think disappointedly, now it seems I can never achieve realization no matter what. So he began to break his retreat and descend the mountain. On the way beside the path, he saw a female dog with disabled hind legs. Her entire lower body was completely rotted, and there were many, many small worms inside. Still, this female dog generated extremely severe hatred toward others and lifted her upper body, beginning to bark frantically. When Asanga Bodhisattva came down, it seemed particularly angry and barked wildly at him, dragging its lower body. The lower body was completely disabled, preparing to bite him. At this time, when Asanga Bodhisattva saw this pitiful sentient being, actually, sometimes when we truly encounter particularly pitiful sentient beings, our compassion arises naturally. So sometimes it's very necessary for practitioners to look at the outside world and the pitiful sentient beings around us. Through such conditions, compassion naturally arises in your mind stream. Asanga Bodhisattva was also like this then. For 12 years he practiced continuously but hadn't generated such strong compassion. Asanga Bodhisattva spontaneously generated unbearably strong compassion for it. He cut flesh from his own body and gave it to that dog. Next, wanting to clear the small worms from its lower body, he thought, if I use my hands to pick them out, I might squeeze many small worms to death. They're everywhere. I should use my tongue to lick them off. But because the female dog's entire lower body was completely rotted and full of pus and blood, looking at it directly, he really couldn't bring himself to lick it. Let me see. If he was from the Brahmin caste, it would be particularly difficult. Was he from the Brahmin caste or the royal caste? He was from the royal caste. The royal caste might be somewhat better. Right, he was from the royal caste. The Brahmin caste is particularly concerned with cleanliness. His younger brother would be even more unwilling to lick it. So he closed his eyes and stuck out his tongue. As a result, his tongue didn't touch the dog's body, but touched the ground instead. When he opened his eyes to look, the female dog was gone, and noble Maitreya Bodhisattva appeared before him in brilliant golden light. At that time, Asanga Bodhisattva felt particularly embarrassed. He had retreated in the mountains for such a long time, but came down unsuccessfully. Yet Maitreya Bodhisattva appeared in front of a female dog. He said very sadly, "Your compassion is really too weak. You never showed your face. Why is this so? I prayed to you for 12 years and could never see you. Today, when I finally left this mountain, you met me on the road. I really cannot accept this." He said this very sadly at that time. At this time, Maitreya Bodhisattva told him, "It's not that I didn't appear to you. Actually, I have never been separated from you, not even for an instant. Actually, when we practice any deity, from the deity's perspective, this can indeed be said. We believe, for example, if you practice Manjushri Bodhisattva, from the day you begin praying, he is inseparable from you like your shadow. Practicing Avalokiteshvara is like this, and practicing Maitreya should also be like this. It's because your negative karma is very heavy that you couldn't see me. Later, after 12 years of practice, your negative karma was slightly reduced, so you could only see this dog. Now you've generated particularly strong compassion, so your karmic obscurations are completely purified, and you can truly see me. If you really don't believe this, you can carry me on your shoulder and show me to everyone." Asanga Bodhisattva carried Maitreya Bodhisattva on his right shoulder and went to the marketplace to ask others, "What is on my shoulder?" People all said there was nothing. Indeed, this principle is very important. When one's karma isn't purified, no forms of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can be seen. Only one old woman whose negative karma was slightly purified could see, saying, "On your shoulder is a rotting dog carcass." She said she saw this. Apart from that, basically everyone else couldn't see anything. This shows that our karma has a great relationship with what we can directly perceive. Subsequently, protector Maitreya Bodhisattva took Asanga Bodhisattva to Tushita heaven and taught him Maitreya's 5 treatises and other wonderful Dharma. Then he returned to the human realm and began spreading Mahayana Buddhism. We should first understand that generally speaking, before one's karmic obscurations are purified, one cannot see such things. Previously, the founder of the Drikung Kagyu lineage was called Master Kyopa Jikten Sumgun. He was a very remarkable, accomplished master who had a disciple named Gotsangpa. Gotsangpa really wanted to go to Odhyana Pure Land for a feast offering, but he had no way to go himself, so he prayed to his guru. The guru said going to Odhyana Pure Land is very difficult, but Jalandhara Pure Land is possible to reach. One day he went. Gotsangpa saw a very magnificent monastery in this pure land. At the gate, many dakinis holding various precious vessels came to welcome them, but his disciple only saw a dilapidated temple with women holding rusty iron tools doing farm work at the gate. He only saw this. He had no interest in going in and didn't want to enter this broken monastery. He said, "Master, you go ahead. I'll just stay here and sunbathe. I don't want to go up." When the guru was about to enter and reach the threshold, wrathful dakinis appeared saying ordinary people cannot enter, making him stop. At this time, the guru abided in the highest realization of Mahamudra. These wrathful dakinis immediately transformed into beautiful women and welcomed him inside, where he joined countless vidyadharas and dakinis for a feast offering. He received many blessed substances, sang Vajra songs, received wonderful teachings, and then returned. When returning, the disciple was particularly reluctant, saying all of today's time was completely wasted. Later, after the guru bestowed many teachings upon him, this disciple also became an enlightened master. So sometimes when we see others, in the eyes of those whose practice is poor, everything appears bad. For example, Bhikkhu Sunakata saw the world-honored one as having ugly features. Maitreya saw the great accomplished master Shavaripa as a pig-killing butcher. Another master saw Vajravarahi, but only saw her as a woman with leprosy. Then Master Buddha Janapada's guru was called Haribhadra, but he saw him as a particularly dirty farmer and so forth. From history, we can see that if one doesn't have pure perception in their mind stream, whether it's one's guru or Dharma friends, one cannot see anyone's qualities once your mind is pure. Indeed, sometimes when we see a particularly pitiful animal, these should be said to be emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. When we see some people with particularly strong greed, anger, or particularly bad behavior, actually this might be the conduct of great accomplished masters. This is possible. So, in these aspects, we must maintain pure perception. Previously, when Shabkar was practicing in the mountains with 2 disciples, they later encountered a particularly pitiful and dirty old woman. When the old woman asked for food and clothing, Master Shabkar gave her everything. This old woman was actually an emanation of Vajravarahi. Finally, various auspicious signs appeared. There are many such accounts, so we should always, everywhere, recognize that emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas appear in different forms at any time. Therefore, we must maintain pure perception. This is an important point from this account. Also, when we usually see pitiful sentient beings, they might be emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or they might be signs showing that one's negative karma is being purified. At such times, we cannot insult them or generate feelings of disgust. When Asanga Bodhisattva went to Tushita heaven, it seems the great Tang dynasty record of the western region says, didn't she have 3 sons, Asanga, Vasubandhu, and Bodhicitta? All 3 of them had tremendous faith in Maitreya Bodhisattva of Tushita heaven. They made an agreement that whoever died first would come back to report the news. They had this promise. Later, the youngest, Bodhicitta, passed away first. 3 years had already passed since he died, but there was no news at all. Later, Vasubandhu manifested parinirvana when he was 80 years old. At that time, Asanga Bodhisattva was 90. There was a 10-year difference between them. After 6 months had passed, there was still no news. At that time, Asanga Bodhisattva thought, both my younger brothers have already passed away. Did they not reach Tushita heaven, or what happened? At that time, many other people were also mocking, saying, your 2 brothers have fallen into the lower realms, that's why they haven't come to report. One day during the first watch of the night, while he was teaching the Dharma to his disciples, light appeared from the sky, along with a celestial being. Master Vasubandhu, in the form of a celestial being, came to tell him, I have been reborn in the inner court of Tushita. At that time, Asanga Bodhisattva asked, 6 months have already passed. Why didn't you come to tell me earlier? He said, I just took birth from a lotus. After taking birth, Maitreya Bodhisattva told me, welcome vast wisdom, twice. I circumambulated Maitreya Bodhisattva's body once, and then immediately came down. 6 months have passed since arriving here. Then he asked about younger brother Bodhicitta. Is he not in Tushita court, or what's the reason? Did you see him? He said, he's not in the inner court, he's in the outer court. Every day he's playing and frolicking with gods and goddesses, being careless. How would he have time to come down? He's just wasting time there every day. Then Asanga Bodhisattva asked, what is the Dharma that Maitreya Bodhisattva teaches? How magnificent is his form? He said, his form cannot be described in words. It's extremely magnificent. The Dharma he teaches has no difference from the content of the Dharma you teach. The content of your Dharma teaching, Asanga Bodhisattva, has no difference, except that the sound of his teaching is melodious, so no sentient being becomes bored. It's not like when we give teachings, from beginning to end people keep falling asleep. Some generate conceptual thoughts and keep having wandering thoughts. It's not like that. Maitreya Bodhisattva proclaims with Brahma's voice, making sentient beings in an instant very quickly become particularly. This account should be in the great Tang dynasty record of the western regions. I once saw an original translation from Jinling Scripture Press, a translation by Kumarajiva of the biography of Asanga and Vasubandhu, but what I saw was in vernacular Chinese. I don't know if there's a classical version. In this, it seems Asanga Bodhisattva went to Tushita heaven and came down after 4 months. Maitreya Bodhisattva transmitted the treatise on the foundation for yoga practitioners to him. The treatise on the foundation for yoga practitioners was transmitted when Maitreya Bodhisattva came down to the human realm. I seem to remember it being like this. Some histories in Tibetan areas say, Asanga Bodhisattva went to Tushita heaven to receive Maitreya's 5 treatises, the ornament of clear realization and the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, as well as Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, distinguishing Dharma and Dharmata and distinguishing the middle from extremes. He received Maitreya's 5 treatises there during one afternoon. When he returned to the human realm, 53 years had already passed. There's also this account in history. Perhaps the historical accounts differ slightly, but regardless, some say the treatise on the foundation for yoga practitioners was composed by Asanga Bodhisattva, but actually it was expounded by Maitreya Bodhisattva. Just like the author of the Ornament of Clear Realization cannot be said to be Asanga Bodhisattva, Asanga Bodhisattva brought it from there. Maitreya Bodhisattva summarized the essential meaning of thousands of sutras and commentaries and expounded them to him. Therefore, the treatise on the foundation for yoga practitioners should be composed by Maitreya and propagated by Asanga. This way of saying it would be more reasonable. From this we can see that for purifying negative karma, there's no teaching more supreme than cultivating great compassion. Moreover, compassion is the unmistaken cause for generating the uncommon bodhicitta in one's mind stream. Compassion is the unmistaken best cause for generating bodhicitta in one's mind stream. Therefore, we must definitely use various skillful means and make our greatest effort to cultivate this bodhicitta. What we call cultivating compassion is like when an armless mother's child is swept away by water. If a mother without arms has her child swept away by water, she will inevitably generate unbearably strong compassionate feelings for her child. She'll think, I have no hands and cannot rescue my child from the water. What should I do now? She might run back and forth because she has no hands. If she jumps in herself, she'll only be swept away too. Apart from this, she really has no other way. She sees this and becomes extremely anxious. So in our process of cultivating compassion, when we see sentient beings' pitifulness, our hearts become particularly anxious, but we are, after all, ordinary beings, so we currently have no way to help. Therefore, one can only generate bodhicitta. The only method is to generate bodhicitta ourselves and become Buddhas to benefit sentient beings. For sentient beings too, if we teach them the Dharma and they generate bodhicitta, if they become Buddhas, they'll also leave this suffering. The only way to permanently leave suffering is to become a Buddha. Apart from this, there's no other path. After generating such thoughts in one's mind and continuously making effort, this is the root of bodhicitta. Her only consideration is finding a way to rescue her child. Unable to bear the suffering in her heart, she cries out in anguish while running everywhere. Similarly, we should also think in our minds, all sentient beings in the 3 realms are swept away by the river of suffering and drowning in the boundless ocean of samsara. Although we've generated rarely bearable compassion for them, we don't have the ability to liberate them from suffering. What should we do now? If each of us truly thinks this way in our hearts, this is a sign of compassion. Oh, so many sentient beings are so pitiful. I really want to save them, but really, look at my own ability. Let alone saving sentient beings, I don't even have the ability to save myself, becoming particularly anxious. So, these analogies are very vivid. The only way is to become a Buddha, so we sincerely pray to the Guru and 3 jewels. When we often pray and contemplate compassion, prayer is important, meditation is important, and focusing on sentient beings during meditation, these are particularly important. Continuously practicing great compassion this way, this is cultivating immeasurable compassion. That's all for today.
Bandara Padmasambhava